2026, and we're testing out a new phone system. So the number on the screen is the one to call. And if the system works out fine, I will get the premium version, and that number, which is generic, will be replaced by some kind of vanity number like 1-800 hoax or something. But we'll come up with that next. But first, I just want to ensure this works. We had attempted open phones last night, and we had some glitchiness, gremlins, the usual suspects. But now I think this is going to solve that issue. There's a number of things I want to go over. Everything's more or less earmarked on my Twitter feed. If you want to follow me at Twitter, the link is below. And it's a mess, but it is the commons. And it's actually a window into our collective id. And if you want to know what we're being programmed with, if you want to know what the masses are being prepared to believe, it's the place to be. And it's impervious to common sense, logic, reason. We live in a very superstitious society. Very superstitious. In fact, I realize people are unserious. People are highly unserious. They're confused. They lack the intellectual independence to know what's real and what's not. And I think that, and this is the sick part, I think people enjoy it. I think people enjoy hyper reality. It's like this collective inebriation. And there's no pushback. The scientific establishment is pushing science fiction, and superstition has been so normalized, and the political realm has long since abandoned objectivity, platforms, principle. So it's pure pandemonium with no exceptions outside of our little circle here. And I really believe that. I mean, if there's another group of people committed to objective reality and knowledge over belief who aren't spellbound by psyops, please let me know, because we will join forces. But as far as I can tell, the Infinite Plane Society is a sole oasis in this sea of irrelevance. And by sea of irrelevance, what we're talking about is how nothing is considered to have more significance than anything else. So Jim Carrey's fillers and Botox is even more demanding or more worthy of our attention than whatever's going on in Iran. The Epstein files, yeah, that was kind of a big deal, but I think there's something else going on with some celebrity that probably eclipsed that. Oh yeah, phones are open. I'm sorry, it's the number's on the screen. I'm not going to recite it because it's not our permanent number yet. So I'm going through my Twitter, and it's more of the same. And this is likely, I don't know, did Steven Spielberg pay for this? Like, why is there so much hype for this alien stuff? But it's been very much fused with demonology. And I've been saying this for a week now. The Overton window, which is the movie screen, or your iPhone screen, the Overton window has been expanded to admit aliens, which is a science fiction superstition. And in doing so, there's no way you can push back against the resurgence of belief in demonology. Candace Owens' latest theory is that Erica Kirk is a hybrid, half human, half robot. She said the same thing about Peter Thiel and Elon Musk. And she's not going away. I think she's clever. In fact, I actually am something of an admirer of Candace Owens, the actress. I don't think of her as truly believing anything she's saying. She's just a highly placed, highly skilled provocateur. And what she's doing is masterful. She's essentially made Alex Jones and David Icke irrelevant without fully jumping the shark. Although she's clearly aware of it. Like, I don't think she's unaware. I don't think she's like crazy, making up stuff, clickbaiting, engagement bait. No, there's definitely a method to the madness here. Sort of like Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson knows his audience when he says that he was attacked by a demon in his bed. He doesn't respect them. He's not one of them, but he knows how easy it is to play them. Like all these Charlie Kirk worshipers, they're all willing to take this path of inquiry, suggesting that maybe Erica Kirk did something and was behind it in some way, but they can't even admit into their frame of reference the possibility that Charlie Kirk deceived them. So it's like we are on Team Charlie against Erica because she killed Charlie for Israel, but none of them consider that they were deceived by Charlie Kirk. It's pretty sad, profound. I don't know how you want to look at this. Like, I'm looking at this global mind control thing as an ancient science and art that has just been perfected. In fact, I would call this a soft totalitarianism, a sublimated World War III, not even just a sublimated Civil War, but it's Orwellian, sure, but it might be the best of all possible worlds. I mean, if you have other ideas, let me know. But given what I know or what I've experienced of the human race, of humanity thus far, I kind of think we might even need this Truman Show to keep the majority of the NPCs in line. So Father Chad Ripperger, on an interview with Sean Ryan, says the Antichrist is going to be perfectly possessed by Satan. He'll have Satan's intelligence, and it'll be extraordinarily difficult to combat this guy without God. We're at the point where they could just decide you're not going to have access to the digital currency. That's how he's going to control people. I love how they recycle these myths every few years, and it's always coinciding with elections. But what I'm kind of highlighting here, and this really became clear to me at this Jim Carrey thing, is that we live in a very superstitious and gullible time. I mean, everybody is very superstitious, and there's no pushback, which means, rationality, reason, logic aren't all that important anymore. And I think we are seeing this because it's what I would consider to be cognitive sabotage. They need our brains to be mush as they remove our ability to discern real from fake because they need the masses confused. And moreover, they need you to be a passive recipient of AI slop. They don't want discernment. And I can see that they've manufactured the precise kind of people that fall for the programming that they promulgate. I'm not their target audience. So here's a tweet from Dr. Carla Turner. She said the alien breeding program is just a cover story. Get this, alien milkshakes. She thought the aliens were using hybrids as a food source. Quote, in one case, they blended up as we would do a milkshake. That's Carla Turner. But I've seen some pushback against this demonic alien thing. Dr. Stephen Greer, the guy who is, kind of one of the major ufologists out there, always talking about disclosure. He's come out recently in front of this, and he said, all this interdimensional demon narrative is psychological warfare. In a recent interview, Stephen Greer argued that the current push to frame UFOs as demonic is not a scientific conclusion, but it's a narrative strategy that's been circulating in the US national security apparatus for decades. According to him, they're lumping this stuff together in order to, and it just sounds like the Mirage Men. They're portraying aliens as demonic so that they steer people away from thinking about advanced technology, covert aerospace programs piloted by man. I mean, I would say that's true of ufology in general, not just the demon alien stuff, not just the interdimensional stuff, but ufology in general, flying saucers, etc., being from Mars. That stuff was all intentionally planted into conspiracy theorist circles to discredit them if they do, in fact, witness classified aircraft. And they started this when they targeted that conspiracy theorist who lived next to the Air Force Base, Kirtland, in Albuquerque. So here we have an admission that ufology is a government-created myth, but people are devotees of this. They worship this stuff. The aliens are like their angels, and they're waiting for a rapture. So they have their sci-fi rapture scenario. And I've been doing a little digging into the rapture, and I don't even think it's super biblical. Like it might even be a recent invention, which doesn't mean that it's a deviation. It just means that it shows you that the religions are able to modify the worldview, update things. So here's an article. I referenced this. I've come across this before, but listen to this. Targeted dream incubation. Meet the researchers who can engineer your dreams. I saw something about advertisers that were somehow getting into people's dreams. I mean, I know I'm already practically neurolinked, no hardware required. I'm consistently getting ads that correlate to my thoughts, and I don't think that's crazy. I think it's likely the result of probably these uh, large language models and this predictive capability where they can pretty much read us. It's not even about reading your mind. It's just about having access to your behaviors over time and putting it through their models. So anyway, this is an article. Meet the researchers who can engineer your dreams, targeted dream incubation. Listen to this. Alex Jones says many times the topics he talks about pop into his mind while he's sleeping. I bet he's being fed this way. Mizell says, interesting. I lucid dream, but haven't had any ads in them. You know, I went through a long period of time, about 6 years, with zero dreams. And now it's every night, vivid. And I notice there's more of a, they're not lucid, but there's more of a coherent storyline throughout. R Cook 33 says dream space is underutilized. Yeah, that's what I'm wondering though. We mentioned King Kill 33's author the other day, James Shelby Downard, and he said these major psyops have political significance, but also the symbolism, the archetypes, the subtext targets the subconscious. And he says in his King Kill 33 that a lot of the occulty subtext to our psyops are there for a reason, and it's to take control of our dreaming mind, our subconscious. And by take control, you know, I'm not quite sure what that means, other than I kind of am in agreement with the concept of Carl Jung that symbolism is the language of the subconscious mind. Why else would there be all these extraordinary attempts to inundate us with stuff that we can't even consciously process? One of the topics that we've had of late is we've been talking about the demiurge Gnostic paradigm in major movies, such as Truman Show, Westworld, Snowpiercer, Ed Harris, and I would even there's quite a few others we could add, Matrix, obvious, Dark City, but this idea is very prevalent in so many movies. And we were kind of getting into this the other day. It's like, why? Why did these popular movies put these concepts in our heads? What's with the esoteric aspect of Hollywood movies? And that's what actually first attracted me to this entire area of inquiry and research, or what they call conspiracy theories, is I started picking up on the stuff. The more I learned about it, the more I'd see how mainstream it was, but it was never overtly referred to. And the Truman Show was a big one for me, just because I noted some similarities between Truman Show, the number 23, and this Illuminatus trilogy. This is like the series of books by Robert Anton Wilson that really created a lot of the conspiracy culture's view on Illuminati, but that series of books specifically referred to the significance of the number 23 and correlate it with the dog star. So Truman wakes up from his prison when the dog star falls. And the number 23 is about a guy having these synchronicities with the number 23 that drive him crazy. So again, esoteric messaging in movies, oftentimes the same actor will carry that kind of messaging through multiple films. So Truman Show's antagonist, the creator of the false world, the demiurge, would be Christoph. And, you know, Christoph was the actor in Westworld with the black hat, the man in black. So you have the people in the sim, the man in black keeps them trapped in their cycle of dying every day and reincarnating, essentially. Same actor, analogous role. And I think his role in Snowpiercer might even be the same, where he's in another closed system. It's a train that never stops, and he's the engineer. As Christoph, this is Ed Harris. So the same actor playing the same role in multiple films, or the same archetypal role behind the character. He said, quote, "We accept the reality of the world with which we are presented." And that's Christoph talking about controlling Truman Burbank's life. But there are so many of these movies, and I'm starting to catalog this stuff as part of this ongoing project of systematizing our research on fake events. So we're going through fake events and then these other themes, motifs, narratives, and then fake people, the long-term actors who play roles across many years. You know, and some of them are very obvious, you know, the Trumps, Musk, the Kirks, where you can look at them as essentially lifetime actors, full-time crisis actors. You know, Trump, crisis actor in chief, which is true for every president. And this Truman Show thing also contains the idea of it all being an illusion or a movie. And that's the major paradigm shift here, is that what our findings, what many conspiracy theorists have noted for years, but what we're putting into a model here is that the reoccurring fake events, there's consistently these fake events that are steering public opinion this way or that. These things create situations or events that become part of our official historical record. And so our consensus worldview can easily be demonstrated to be one that is an amalgamation of a bunch of fake events that are presupposed to have been real by the people in this hyper reality. So in other words, lies agreed upon. And we can demonstrate how influential and significant and prevalent this systemic fakery is, this long-term manipulation of the mass consciousness. And what it's revealing is that we have essentially been living in a movie. Like, that's not a stretch to say that our consensus worldview is the result of a prefabricated series of scenes. In other words, like reality TV. So yes, we do live in a collective Truman Show, but it's internalized. And we're getting very close to the point where I think I can explain it in under half an hour to a normie. Not that they'll want to hear it. I'm not sure. It certainly is outside the bounds of any of the propagandists to even go here. And one of the first focuses for this, when I provide an example, I'm not going to let's talk about 9/11 again. I'm sorry, it's been like 25 years. Nobody cares. Let's talk about Charlie Kirk and how he's still alive, and how Candace Owens, TPUSA, Erica, Vance, and Trump would all necessarily have to know about this, and then describe what that says about the world stage, about politics and media. And that's the only really challenging proposition that people haven't been faced with. They'll talk all day about who killed Charlie, or they'll kind of dabble in Charlie's not dead, but they can't wrap their minds around it because they have a blinkered perspective. Their point of view is centered within the world stage and all of its lies. Our point of view encompasses media fakery, psyops, long-term manipulation of history by prefabricating events with decades in the planning in some cases. And so what we're doing is we're putting the Charlie Kirk is not dead conspiracy theory into a context where it's actually the best explanation for what we all observed. And it's an inconvenient thing for people to confront and look at closely because it raises questions, valid questions about Butler, Pennsylvania, about the epidemic of mass shootings. It even raises questions about the validity of the Epstein saga. I was talking to a somewhat normie person today, and I was like, this Epstein thing is likely totally fake for the purposes of propping up this political horseshoe. So you need Minneapolis for the left, Epstein for the right. Each of these gives a enough evidence for each side to believe that their scapegoat, their oppressor, is indeed the main villain in their world that they have to confront. So for the left, it was, oh, look, ICE demonstrates systemic racism, whiteness is the oppressor. For the right, Epstein says, hey, look, we're all living underneath the thumb of Israel because the Mossad has hijacked the entire American government through blackmail. And I'm saying these things are fabricated. I don't think that Renee Good is dead. So that's another one. I'll bring that one up. Charlie Kirk's not dead, sure, but Renee Good is an actress, not dead. And people get mad when you say this. And the more they're ideologically aligned with the PSYOP, the more angry they get when you say it's fake. The people who are pushing back against the Charlie Kirk thing, they just assume that I'm a rabid liberal because I'm insulting their martyr. And what we're seeing now is this deep dive into the character of Erica Kirk, which just makes Charlie look more and more innocent, as though he was, a pure white, a pure Christian, pure of heart, just wants to save the world and all this stuff. And then this woman came into his life and subverted him and got him killed. And so Erica Kirk actually said, Candace Owens said, Charlie Kirk was the first casualty of the war in Iran. This conspiracy theorizing that we're seeing isn't going away because it's part of the architecture of alt media. They need this. They also need for the conspiracy theorists to appear to be unhinged because they want to continually maintain this triangulation between establishment media and the anti-establishment media. Even though both are controlled by the same central big brother presence here, it's just one central monolithic outlet, but it's bifurcated to create this triangulation. And so when you see these characters like Owens go into extremes, it's by design. They need to be completely unrelatable to the other side. Here's a quote from former CIA Director William Casey. We will know our disinformation program is complete when everything the American public believes is false. That's already done. They've already completed their disinformation program. And I think that we see these quotes and it's like, this is ominous. This could happen. It's like, no, we're already here. We already live in 1984. You're already in a simulation. The average person can't tell real from fake. Confusion has been normalized. This is the agenda. The truth, the objective truth needs to be out of our grasp. We're supposed to be dependent on external sources to guide us or to fill us in. You're not supposed to have direct knowledge. You're supposed to be a believer. They don't like media Gnostics. because they tend to see through things. All right, let's see who's here. We are joined by JDM, RZX, Portal Complex, Wake Soto, the Pox Bottle, Let's Go, Paradoxy Moronics, Mazel, Travis Brannon, Auto Hoaxer, GTFO, and I Go Dago. We do have an 800 number. It's on the screen. Again, I'm not going to stay with that number. I'm testing out the system. I'm trying out some, it's called Grasshopper, but it has a great feature in that the voicemail system is excellent. And so you can leave voicemails 24/7, and I'll be able to play those on live streams. As soon as I get back into OBS, Open Broadcasting Software, and I can start bringing back clips and video clips, we'll be there soon. We're working towards that. All right, continuing. Reverend Benjamin Kramer says, the rapture is not in the Bible. It wasn't present in Christianity before the 19th century. The rapture makes for dangerous theology and foreign policy. Interesting. Probably true. The alien rapture, though. The alien rapture is the thing they are selling people on right now. Although it's aliens or demons, depending on which side of the political horseshoe that you're on. What's up, Ready or Not? Thanks for joining. Ex-leader of Satanic Church says half of all missing kids are never found because they're used in sacrifices. And he names Oprah Winfrey's elite girls' school in South Africa as part of it. Someone asked me how Oprah is aging in reverse. I think I found your answer. I think it's remarkable that we live at a time where people say these things with no sense of irony, no sense of shame. Like a TC Confessional says, the Iran conflict is controlled by the fallen angel, Prince of Persia. So we live in an age of fallen angels, aliens, demons, satanic cabals, and then the truthers are there using numerology and leaning into simulation theory. I heard someone on a podcast today say that the Mandela effect is real, but NPCs don't believe in it because we're given the updates so we don't experience the cognitive dissonance. So I failed that test. If having the Mandela effect means you have a soul and not believing in it makes you an NPC, I guess I'm an NPC. And I came across this other thing. I think it's called it has to do with this inability to hold images in one's head. I think is it aphantasia? Yeah, aphantasia, the inability to create mental images in the mind's eye, where people's thoughts are conceptual rather than visual. I've heard that NPCs can't visualize. I've been doing some research into this NPC concept. I mean, I have a different definition of it. A couple. I mean, I do think there is something to it. I think you can divide people into the programmed and the programmers, which are kind of a mix because the programmers are mostly programmed. But it's largely a matter of training. I think we are entrained and having no alternatives. There's no reason or incentive to break away from the program. So most people are by default rendered into NPCs, but I don't think it's a permanent state. I think you can essentially wake up, but you have to recognize the distinction between real and fake, and where the manufactured events are being merged with the real events in order to not march lockstep with all the fake agendas. Eddie says all the satanic sacrifice is becoming tiresome. Yeah, I agree with that. I'm actually burnt out. I have Epstein fatigue. I got Jim Carrey fatigue. I'm starting to have alien and demon fatigue, and I'm certainly done with the whole satanic cabal story. And what has really come of it? You have all these truthers with millions of emails. Has anything happened? Okay, let me go ahead and clear up some space in the chat. No offense there, but it does seem like we had a bit of a glut, an info glut that was drowning out much of the chat room. You can call in, by the way. If you have a lot to say, you're welcome to call in. Duet Celeste says, I have invert fatigue. I don't, because I don't believe it's true. I think it's ludicrous. And, I've been making this point here that we need to own our claims, not just providing the burden of proof, but if you're going to stand by something that's unreasonable, you should at least say it. Like, I have this unreasonable belief that the Democrats are satanic, or I have this unreasonable belief that Donald Trump is a woman. Like, I hear people making these claims, but you should make a distinction between serious claims and unserious claims. Like, Jim Carrey got sacrificed by the Illuminati and he's been replaced. Well, that's not a serious claim. You can try to make it serious, but that would mean you would have to do a little homework to research some of the presuppositions to that claim, like full grown clones. But I think we need to make this distinction because what differentiates what we do from world stage media is we have standards of evidence and we do apply the formal rules of logic, whereas mainstream and alt media is based solely on belief. Yeah, I see what you mean. You got invert, that they are all inverts fatigue. Yeah, look, I got fatigue on the people who say everything's CGI. Like, oh, guess what, guys? Big revelation here. Jim Carrey never existed. He's only pixels. Like, that's not even insightful. Or Jeffrey Epstein, only pixels. Ghislaine Maxwell never existed, only CGI and AI. And I'm like, where do you make this distinction between who is completely CGI and who isn't? Like, what kind of expertise, what kind of additional information is being brought to the table that could get us to find a similar conclusion? Like, I'm just saying, I'm open-minded, but provide evidence for your claim. Show me that Jim Carrey never existed. Like, demonstrate how AI could explain this actor who's been around for decades in our faces. When you see the word all, it's kind of a red flag. Like, oh, or everything. Like, oh, everything's fake. Nope, those people are wrong. Everything's real is also wrong. Everybody on TV is inverted. Wrong. And one of the reasons I point this out is that none of these conspiracy theories exist in a vacuum. They're all part of belief clusters. And if you have one that you stand by, you're now in league with a lot of other people who are totally brainwashed and a bunch of stuff you probably don't believe in. So you're kind of just volunteering for the mind war. You have all these conscripts, these people who are by default participating in it, and then you're going to join it. Wayne Dion says one of them was claiming Mike Tyson was one. Well, not to his face. But I mean, I'm saying these aren't serious claims. I don't think they are. But what is the point? Well, I think the point is largely it's weaponized entertainment, weaponized rumors. Like they're essentially using conspiracy theory overload to completely nullify all of the free thinkers, all those who don't trust the mainstream, all the ones who are willing to entertain hypotheticals and question the official narratives. They go into the circus, they go into this other area where nothing is serious, and many of them never get out. They start drinking the Kool-Aid in Alex Jonestown. They go down Q Street, smoke some of that. They get addicted to the red pill, the current things, and then they get, if they go into the harder stuff, they get drafted into woke right politics. That is not the way off the world stage. Eddie says, is TMZ for truth? Yeah, TMZ for truthers. Yeah, entertainment is a huge part of it. Engagement bait and rage bait has incentivized clicks over facts, engagement over discernment. And there's a lot of content harvesting, content theft. It's a race. It's a competition. It's a mess. And there's no standards of evidence. And when people are wrong about something, they don't lose credibility because there are so many gullible want to believe types that there's always going to be, for every skeptic who turns away in disgust or refutes it, there's going to be 1,000 people who are happy to share it. And I see certain things as litmus tests, certain topics or ideas that kind of tell you where people are at. And having been looking at this, Trutherville is done. It's unfixable. It's unsalvageable. Just, I mean, carpet bomb it, start over, nuke it, nuke Trutherville. And I've changed my strategy. At first, I thought, let's leave the normies alone and let's just pitch the world stage metascript breakdown concept to truthers, and those who are, mostly out of the box will figure it out and join us. Now, if you're still in Trutherville, you have zero discernment. You're a gullible fool, or you're addicted to entertainment and truthertainment, and you don't give a damn about facts, objectivity, or truth. You're just basically socializing and venting. So you're not a serious person if you're still surrounding yourself with Ian Carroll, Candace Owens, unless it's ironic and just for entertainment. But if those are your sources, you're lost. So I've decided I'm going to start focusing now on Normieville. I will break it down at the level that the absolute noob, non-conspiracy theorist will understand what we're getting at here. And I think this will be effective because I will also be able to triangulate against the conspiracy theorists, because when you talk about the stuff, the normies will immediately push back. Oh, this is a conspiracy theory. This is unapproved. Like, no, this isn't a conspiracy theory. Like those people. No, this is completely different. Not that I'm trying to convert people, but what we are attempting to do here is generate discourse, friction, debate, in order to bring the off-world stage perspective into the world stage where it must be confronted. And in the confrontation, as they attempt to dismiss it, marginalize it, censor it, or whatever, that process, I think, will help us aggregate all of the deprogrammed. Because, again, there's no platform for the deprogrammed. The establishment controls the alternative. There's no platform for what we term the off-world stage perspective. It does not exist. So we created it. But now we need to find we need to do a rapture. This is a rapture of the auto hoaxers. If you have seen through the duopoly, you see through the fake events, and you recognize there are no big influencers, channels, or networks that will ever validate what you're saying or acknowledge you have a point, it's by design. And we are reaching out to essentially create this third branch of media. And I conservatively guess there's at least 10 to 15,000 stray penguins. They just don't know it yet. They're out there mixing in with the mind controlled, saying, hey guys, I think we ought to look at this from another perspective. Maybe Charlie's not dead. Like, no, Israel killed him. Haven't you been watching Candace Owens? So if you're in a sheep pen, you're not going to get anywhere, because the sheep don't listen to individuals in the sheep pen. They listen to the authority up on the screen that's been appointed for them. But I'm looking forward to the confrontation, the debate, because one thing I'm certain of too is that this perspective isn't going unnoticed. It's just not acknowledged, because it represents a fundamental disruption to the marketplace of ideas in the conspiracy realm. And it also undermines the very worldview that they defend. I mean, you can't be mad at a certain group for doing all these bad things if the bad things are fake. And also, what the PSYOP entertainment complex, how I describe it, what it reveals too, is that if you're involved in partisan politics, partisan media, you've been betrayed. Your own side is betraying you, because both sides are controlled opposition to the other side. In Wicked Part 2, the Wizard of Oz says something to the effect that you can tell them the truth, the believers are going to still believe what they want to believe. Like, the truth doesn't matter. And I think that's largely true. Like, I am not at all convinced that anybody's going to convert. We're just using the NPCs as amplifiers, to bounce the ideas off so they can reach the people who can actually process them. You got to have ears to hear, eyes to see. There's this different set of, I guess you'd say, it has to do with epistemology, different set of presumptions when it comes to media consumption that will make a determination as to whether or not somebody thinks this makes sense. It's comfortable to go with the herd and to react to the mind war as though it's real with people who are in the same cult. And I also think that there's been a great deal of hijacking of the human experience. I mean, there's a reason why people share conspiracy theories. And I think there's a reason why we are prone to hearing them out and even forwarding and sharing these things. And I think it has to do with our natural inclination to be storytellers and sharing information in these entertaining formats. Like, these are like modern myths. And it's part of what holds everything together. I think that sitting around telling stories, oral traditions, campfire stories, I think that's been a mainstay of the human experience. And now it's just being filtered through, well, these propagandists. They're essentially hijacking that part of life and using it to, maintain this political horseshoe. The extremes, the approved extremes. Our perspective is definitely coming from outside their boundaries. I mentioned this yesterday. Frank Herbert from Dune Messiah said, quote, "They're not mad. They're trained to believe, not to know. Belief can be manipulated. Knowledge is dangerous." I love that quote because it perfectly explains our predicament. It's a matter of training. Like, people have been trained into becoming passive recipients of propaganda. They've been trained into their NPC hood. I don't think they were, born that way. Listen to this. This is from FinTech 03, Physics and History. It's talking about Sir Isaac Newton. Newton viewed his work in physics and mathematics as a distraction from his true calling, deciphering the mind of God through alchemy and ancient scripture. Newton was a heretic. He believed the Holy Trinity was a fraud and worshiping Christ was idolatry. He created a Latin anagram of his own name. He believed he was a prophet chosen to rediscover the ancient wisdom and wrote over 1 million words on alchemy, more than he wrote on anything else. I've been looking a bit into alchemy, and it reminds me in many ways of masonry, where in masonry you have this analogy of building cathedrals used to describe spiritual advancement. And I think alchemy is essentially the same thing, using chemistry to describe through analogy the process of spiritual enlightenment. Yeah, the phones are on. It's an 800 number. It's on the screen. And this is going to be likely the phone system from here on out. Right now, we're mostly just talking about aliens and demons. And how these things are being pushed simultaneously. Beware the false light said. People struggle to understand why dispensationalism has been pushed so hard in the West. It's so you'll be deceived when the Antichrist comes on the scene and claims to be Christ. You know, that sounds outlandish and far out, but people are gullible enough to accept it. If you remember, in 2022, you had the entire Q movement expecting JFK himself to show up at Dealey Plaza on the anniversary of his death. There were people out there in Dallas waiting for an assassinated president to come back from the dead and save the world. And many of these people believe that he was the second coming of Christ. So I don't think it's far off. They just need to put it on the news. Look how many people, like Marjorie Taylor Greene right now is anti-Trump, but in 2023, when he was, being taken to court, she was comparing him to Christ. Jim Caviezel compared him to King David. He was compared to Moses. Infinite Plane Radio.
Hey, it's James. How you doing, Tim?
Hey, what's up? Let me ask the audience if the phone is too muffled. I might need to change speakers.
Yeah, it might be me too. I got a problem with my device, I think, a little bit, but
I think it's good, but hey, so what do you think? You think the alien thing is going to be a nothing burger? Is it just a build-up for this upcoming Steven Spielberg movie, or do you think we're going to have some kind of a plot twist?
to be honest, I haven't heard about the Stephen King movie yet. So I can't make comment on that. But alien thing is, to me, it's a big fugazi. The percentage of people or life here on Earth is so astronomically, long, but it is possible. It is possible there's life elsewhere. But the probability is, drive me to say that like not life elsewhere. But I tend not to try to get too much into that one.
Yeah, I'm kind of tired of it. I mean, it's not like this hasn't been a major topic like every 3 to 5 years for the last 50 years. It's not like it's novel.
Right. But I think we've had, like with the story of the fallen angels and whatnot, I think we're going to be able to prove space and time travel and multi-universes kind of thing, and that's going to justify the alien story, I guess. When some of this secret societal knowledge comes out as time progresses here, speeds up here towards these later days. I think that there's time markers that have been pointed out and kept in secret. I think at the Olympics in LA is going to be interesting time, personally.
Well, it would certainly be like the moon landing. The moon landing updated our collective paradigm. Now we're in the space age. Now we can validate all the science. It demonstrates everything they told us about our cosmos. So, in a lot of ways, the moon landing was like this unifying miracle. And I kind of think that any kind of alien invasion is likely going to be some kind of one world unifier. That's how it's always packaged.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I just think we're going to be looking through those ideas in different lenses, because of what we might understand here about things in the near future. That's kind of my point of view. It seems like the whole alien conversation has taken a turn. It used to be just so beaten down our throats, and I think that some of those things have been proven to be, you know, technologies and cover up stories, and fake news is just so dominant these days. And I don't even think that anything's real. I mean, I think the only anything that happens is actually real. They don't tell that to us, and so we don't glorify the ugly and just fake everything out there with the help of Solomon's key and stupid things like that control the chaos, and it's just kind of fake and lovingly coddled into submission and sent on to elsewhere. It's kind of beautiful if you think on it in certain light.
Well, I still classify aliens technically as a superstition, and I think it's notable that the public is being considered, or rather, I think they're being conditioned to be superstitious. So, like, you can believe in aliens, you can believe in angels or demons, as long as you believe. And this isn't like a scientific proposition, but it's been so mainstreamed. I mean, I feel like it's a joke in a lot of ways. Like, they know it's not serious, but the public just laps it up and they just bask in the attention.
Yeah, we want things in a split second in this era, and things move so fast that we just don't take time to question things as much as and I think a lot of us will be again coddled into an understanding where we're just gonna be like, we're not wearing our dunce caps, or we don't feel stupid. I think America, the U.S. government, is global dominator. I think somebody had to win basically in competition through global history, and they're just really good, and they got everything covered, especially with AI technologies. These phones, these devices, they pick up everything, and then they go back in time a little bit. This is a time travel thing. If anything is going to be trusted, time travel is going to be a device, AI, because it has no soul, it has no choices, because we program it to do. And so we can gather up all this information on everything, and it's just.
Do you believe time travel works both ways, like past and future, or how do you think time travel works as far as the time?
I think you can only go backwards.
Okay.
And if you go forwards, you can't go forwards. I think forwards is Jesus' realm. Let's just say, because my theory is we got to the end, like we're nearing now, through understanding in time and space, and the perfect God, that structure, construct that is, perfect knowledge. We knew what was going to happen at the end, so we knew the ending, right? And when we got smart and we got the secret societal knowledge, we got the materials developed, we went backwards. We went backwards with two plans, basically. I come up with an idea of 4,000 years, and then we have a equal and opposite, dimension. So one plan is maybe it's all good, and then the other plan's maybe all bad. And up the middle is where we live, and Jesus lived. So when we went past Jesus' birth, Jesus was in the lead of the three dimensions. So my theory is we make a perfect infinite figure eight. We're in the middle, and we have equal and opposite on right and left, kind of like your shoulders. You get the devil on one side, and the good angel on the other side.
I certainly agree with you about the future thing. Like, I can understand if there were such a thing, time travel going back, but I don't think the future exists. Like, I don't think the universe exists as a material object until the present. Like, I think it's sort of, in that sense, it's just the realm of it's infinite possibilities that condenses into matter and tends to fit with the plant, with the momentum of the direction it was going, unless acted upon by some agency. But yeah, I don't think the future actually exists.
Sure. Yeah, no, I mean, well, the only way it exists is in the essence of time. Time is really interesting because, that whole Amsterdam device or something, whatever there were, Indiana Jones's, this movie was about time travel. That was found in Greece. That kind of was like a marker. And, that device was interesting because not only did it, and like how we understand time, 24-hour thing, it also kind of did a perpendicular motion, like kind of like our equator and our prime meridian, right? And it's that the thing just picked up time in a certain way, and that's perfect math. It's math, it's communication, and it's like a formula written out throughout time. And the pi that you thing that you have, it's like we went backwards, forward, or actually, won't they say that pi is actually the points that we leaped ahead, where these things were prominent points in time, basically, is where these things are considered to happen. And math is basically just your equation of time. It's perfect. It is. It's a perfect 12,000-year cycle, in my opinion, and comes to completion, fairly soon, allegedly.
Well, I don't like, okay, about time travel. I think it's interesting, the theory behind it, or the notion. But one thing that I can say for sure is that the elite of the world do in fact control time, in the sense that they manufacture our history. And this was illustrated by the Design Authority, another movie, Megalopolis. But the Design Authority is kind of this Saturnian, like the strangers from Dark City, where they can freeze time. And I think that just describes how those who control media and manufacture events put us in a timeline that is essentially a construct. So time control is kind of built into how they rule this place in a very mundane sense.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, you said the control timing points. It's kind of like what I was describing with pi. When you pass those points in time, as it's kind of just locks down things, and it does. The math does run on forever, but if you believe in the three dimensions, it was created at basically, the theory is the Olympics in 6/16/2028. That is the point when we reveal that we are 1 second ahead of another dimension, and we prove it by going that 1 second backwards and revealing a whole civilization that exists 1 second behind us and is built waiting for us, basically. But we've been building it from here as well. We've been taking these things that we developed, UFOs and whatnot, throw them up in the sky, and then we use that element 115 and bend time, and throw that 1 second into that dimension, so that elements are there for the city and the thing to be built. Like, for example, they say Jerusalem's going to come from the sky, right? Well, that's technically true because it's just floating around up there in pieces of metal and magnetism and electro, this and that, nuclear, this and that, all that cool stuff that we had to develop here at the end of the age. They didn't have that. They didn't have time to synthesize that. That's what we need time. So, I think Jerusalem is partially built. It's sitting in trash lantis, as I call it. It's controlling currents, water, electromagnetism. That's what
trash lantis. Very interesting.
Yeah, I call it trash lantis because all the currents collect and it brings everything there. And that's, a power point on this earth. The currents are what are, I believe we start with flat earth. And then, the flawed theory or whatever you want to look at that can be turned into a wobbling earth, with this time frame that is really perfect to think about because that created the current in the waters.
Do you think the earth is a discrete object floating in space?
No, I think it's an orbit. I think we go around our sun. We have a solar system. I think that's all accurate. I think the fact that we're pursuing space and we're learning about it, that's all relevant, that's all fair. Was there life on Mars? I don't know, but we'll find that out in the future. But, there could be life. I'm not saying there's not, but I think probabilities I think we'll create life in space. I mean, the theory about Chernobyl growing this fungi, actually, nobody's seen that one coming. That was like, if you believe in God, maybe you don't. That was God just, hey, you didn't know this was on your secret society thing, did you? Now we got life in space probabilities because that stuff lives in space. I don't even know if that's a true story, but I kind of heard that and I really thought that was interesting. That elephant sport that they say in Chernobyl is growing a fungi and it lives in space.
Interesting. I still think that space is mostly a new iteration of paradise or heaven. It's a construct. I don't know if it's a place that, I don't believe that space travel is anything more than science fiction. And that's just because the evidence for it is rather sparse and it's coming from questionable sources that have used special effects. But the purpose to the idea of space, I think a lot of it is about putting us into this modern scientific paradigm in which the soul is excluded from the calculation. Human agency isn't a thing. Because I think the universe is human centric. I mean, that's my opinion. So it's not about geography, but it's about that the entire point of it centers around the human experience. And that might be a little too, it looks to some people, especially like atheistic types, as coping with meaninglessness because I'm just an ape, just an animal. And I don't agree with that.
No, yeah. I think when there's like a disclosure project, movies and stuff. I think things coming out here and speeding up because if this theory is true about surrounding the Olympics in 2 years, we're going to have to understand where we're going. If this is being built in this, the stuff's going to have to come out because we're going to have a twin or another version of us, and that we're going to have to pick or something to. I think this realm here in the middle is where perfect knowledge lives, and wisdom in the history books, so all the records. Jerusalem as they come from the sky. That's just a big hall of records, and all the stuff that's gathered up. That's where your paper reforms. Everything's gonna come out, and you get to go check out things if you want that. And have a good time. But it's just some fascinating things. Right, a lot of fascinating things. Space. You asked me. Well, Pat, I think they had to create the moon, frankly, to get the Earth from a flat Earth to a sphere, and that would hold it and put it in orbit with a rotation to make times and days. It goes back to the story of Genesis, like basically day one. The Bible starts off, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. So, in my theory, that's 8,000 years of time that we actually created as humans in the third dimension. That starts when we prove this here in 2 years, because our robots that Elon designs, we got 3 years after that, and we send them back to the beginning of time, before Adam. And then they go 8,000 years and they start mining and put them on the PowerPoint. So we can prove all that with the records that we produce.
So you
think that's all the secret.
You think in a couple of years, this whole thing is going to come to a halt, a rapture of some kind?
Yeah, absolutely. I do. I really do. I think the truth's going to come out. I think that each and every government, I think we have some form of world peace. I think everything we see is fake. Like, for instance, Iran's leader, he's not dead. They're just eternally handling, this truth movement. They cut off all the lights, turned off all the Wi-Fi. They went back to the Stone Age and they regrouped. They're people that are going to lead by example. They're going to show us that, okay, forget about us. We don't need your help. Don't rebuild us. Nope, we're good. We don't need your help. Thank you. No, just whatever. And America agreed to be the bad guy because they are the global dominating force. They are the only ones. They had to win. It's competition.
You mean you're suggesting that there's going to be a breakaway civilization where they go back to the Stone Age?
No, I'm not necessarily thinking that. I'm thinking that in Revelation they talk about the crown, 10 stones, 10 things, stones that represents 10 world leaders. Those 10 world leaders are just going to all go and take care of their 10 areas individually. Like they're going to clean up their own messes. And Iran's doing that. All the news you see is fake. So they're just creating a story. Iran's blowing up all their own crap. America's not blowing up weapons. Iran's got weapons. They're doing their own thing. They're putting proximity mines. They're blowing them overseas. Nobody's dying. They're blowing up some buildings they don't need because we got free energy 2 years away. I mean, that's basically what we get.
Okay.
Until we got built.
Okay. Free. That's. I mean, the Great Awakening, free energy, some big revelation, disclosure. This stuff's always being teased, but it's always been nothing burgers. And we were served a second serving of the whole Epstein thing. So I'm a little jaded by the whole proposition that there's going to be any change. I think it's going to be boring externally, but internally, our experience of it's going to be very entertaining. But like nothing's going to happen in the real world, in my opinion. But we'll see. Appreciate your perspective. Thanks for calling in.
Yeah. Thanks for the time, Tim. I love your show.
Awesome. Thank you for calling. Have a great night.
Yep.
Okay. Well, raptures are so hot right now. Rapture is a big topic. The Great Awakening, the Great Reset. And I think this is typical. You've got doomsdays, and then you have something to hope for. You got these great awakenings or these very dark potential futures. And I think that these are both contrivances, essentially narrative frameworks to get people to either obey out of hope or maybe out of fear. But I think these are just two different main pillars that they use to motivate the masses to look at the future in a certain way. And also it takes individual agency out of it because this thing's going to happen. Now, Musk does talk about how nobody's going to have to work in a few years, which I don't know if that's true. I kind of doubt it. I wouldn't wait on it. It's like, oh, you know what? Don't worry about an education or job skills. Don't learn plumbing. Just sit at home and play video games because pretty soon AI is going to take over all the heavy lifting. But that's what he's suggesting. Wayne Dion says, what's he talking about? Yes, we were talking about time travel and rapture. I don't think that time travel is like a literal thing. It's an interesting proposition, but I do think that there's absolute time control, that we are living in a contrived, manufactured history, which has given the power elite de facto time control. Mazel says some jobs should be automated to some degree. Agreed. I think that it would be a really great idea if the entire food service industry could be outsourced to robots. Sanitary, polite. Put robots in all the restaurants. You don't have to tip them. How many of you have Roombas? Is that what they call those things? Those like vacuum cleaners that are automated? I saw this massive spider this morning. Well, I saw it yesterday. I saw it today. I was like, I can sense these things. I just look and they're there. I can feel their eyes on me, I think. But I don't kill spiders. It's like a Roomba for bugs. Because that's what they do. They just goes around killing little bugs. Like, I don't have a problem with that. Outsourcing, that is. It's just like a new ecological niche that needs to be, that we're filling now with robots. It's like, we have these new needs, outsource it. And who's against it? Like, if you're against robots taking over certain jobs, are you doing that job? Or you're more comfortable with humans doing it? But AI phobia is kind of hypocritical. A lot of people are kind of Luddites when it comes to this stuff, but it's really just virtue signaling, I think. or rejecting the change. They're afraid of rapid change. Maybe they fear their own obsolescence, but we're already obsolete, I think. Like your vote doesn't even matter. We have no real power or control here. Rizal says, I can feel or sense spiders too. It's like they announce themselves. Yeah, I can't figure that out. Like, how is it that I'm just sitting there and then I just look for no reason? And way off to the side, there's a spider just glaring. I've had the same experience with shooting stars. You know, just look up at some random spot in the night and you see the rock from space coming down. Over here, they're mostly green, which I think is magnesium or something. All right, let's continue here. Again, I'm totally not thinking that they're going to pull anything off. I think we're being set up for another big disappointment. All of this ufology stuff that's popular right now is more or less riding on the coattails of the announcement of a new Steven Spielberg. It's a movie event. It's not just a movie. It's like a major cultural event. It's like Passion of the Christ is coming out, and then you've got the Alien Disclosure. So depending on what side of the spectrum you're on, where you lean into when it comes to your paradigm, are you more traditional or more progressive? Duet Celeste says, I have the same thing with spiders. I can sense them even in the middle of the night. Yeah, there is. I think there's something curious about this. I think that intuition is the source. Like, I just have this theory that most of the information that we don't consciously process is not simply going into some landfill in the back of our mind, but I think it's being intelligently processed. And a lot of our peripheral information is getting to us, just not front and center. And I think that that would explain what we experience as precognition, telepathy, intuition. I think it's an automated process. And maybe it's atrophied because we don't live in the jungle. You know, we're living in this modern context where we don't need to be hyper attuned to our environment. We don't need to be in fight or flight. Situational awareness takes a back seat to, you know, how we look on the screen. All right, let's see here. I'm going through my Twitter feed. I had this article that was posted in Discord, and it had to do with all these nurses, well, rather patients in hospitals. Here it is. Because someone the other day talked about how there are certain parts in Los Angeles where the malls are populated by actors, like crisis actors. They're just shopping. But call the doctor. This is from Variety. As Hollywood gigs dry up, actors are playing fake patients in real hospitals. And this makes sense because you can be replaced by AI when it comes to a movie production, what's on the screen. But in real life, there's plenty of applications for actors, or what they would call shills. So if you want your mall or your restaurant to look busy, just hire some actors. Crowds on demand. Crowds on demand has been around for some time, where there are people who are basically willing to act in a role in your life and just be NPCs. But apparently, this is a thing. It says here, it's a simulation. The doctors are second-year medical students, and they have actors playing the role of standardized patients. And this is done for the doctors to train. So, in other words, it's like mass casualty simulations where you have people pretending to be victims so the first responders can get some experience dealing with these highly realistic mass casualty actors with these, you know, bloody head wounds and stuff, so they can get some on the ground practice. And they're doing the same thing in these hospitals. Says here, the simulations help actors hone their, it helps the actors hone their skills. Their main objective is to be as natural as possible, so students don't feel like they're talking to actors. Actors see the program as a meaningful way to give back. So yes, you can go to the hospital and you might see a bunch of people being paid $25 to $30 per hour. Now it says they're called SPs. I'm trying to find out what that stands for. Standardized patients. Okay, standardized patients. As the entertainment business constricts, squeezing opportunities in Hollywood and on Broadway, standardized patient gigs have become a creative and reliable side hustle for performers in between jobs. You know, I heard about that guy from Better Call Saul, the actor who was also in Breaking Bad. Apparently, he's delivering packages for Amazon because there's no gigs for him, which is kind of sad. Dan W says there was a Seinfeld episode where Kramer did it, acting for training doctors to guess what he had. Okay. There's something very Truman Show-esque about it. You know, actors in hospital beds, actors in the malls. Then you go online and it's mostly, you know, shills, people just acting like they have these opinions. I don't think we live in a literal Truman Show. I say it's merely an internalized construct or internalized model of the world, a simulation in that sense. Lean Dion said Kramer had chlamydia. I still think the Kramer AIDS ribbon segment is one of the best things I've ever seen on TV, because it really does show groupthink, virtue signaling, and how the nonconformist is just somehow seen as a threat to group solidarity and therefore a threat to fighting the thing they're marching against. It's all symbolism over substance. Okay, so here you have another, this is a Piers Morgan guest, and he's talking about, quote, Jeffrey Epstein was a science spy focused on gravity. His name is Eric Weinstein. He was focused on gravity, and this will come out in the UFO disclosures. It's not just about UFOs, it's about UFO weirdness. It's about a golden age of general relativity and US attempts to gain control over additional forces of nature. So Eric Weinstein is on Piers Morgan suggesting that the alien disclosure is going to bring up something about anti-gravity. He also said that the CIA has a private air force that destroys private observation equipment. He said, like, in other words, if you're observing UFOs, the CIA is going to send some craft down to destroy it. He says there's a private air force that seems to come down from the skies and destroys equipment of people observing UFOs. This turns out to be the CIA's Office of Global Access. Now, I'm not looking for this. I'm reading the Zeitgeist, which gets updated every single day. And I'm trying to extrapolate from what the consensus is being programmed with, what is going to happen next. And so we've been watching the various permutations of this alien disclosure narrative, and it's going in some interesting directions. And I'm wondering, you know, did we reach a turning point? Did they open the Overton window a bit more, and is it going to stay this way? Or is this going to end in some kind of a nothing burger? But I think the uptick in the acceptability, the social acceptability of superstition is a precursor. So we're being allowed to embrace superstition and wild conspiracy theories. And I'm suggesting this is probably a precursor to a big psyop. They need to make sure that we're unhinged, not anchored to reality, and in no position to stand up for objective reality. And I think they have us there. I think we're primed. Dan W. said levitation possessed anti-gravity. Yeah, levitation is an interesting concept. It was something that I noticed in Stranger Things, where Elle levitated that capsule. And it made me think about Eliphas Levi, he was a magi. He wrote these books on magic. He designed the modern Baphomet. We talked about him recently. His birthday was on the 8th of February, the Super Bowl day at Levi Stadium. But anyway, Levi, I think there might be some significance here to Leviathan and levitation. There's something here. I've been kind of digging into this rabbit trail, and it has to do with the. Let me see if I can find what I'm looking for here. So in the Hebrew Bible, Leviathan is a multi-headed sea serpent or dragon. It represents cosmic evil in theology. Thomas Hobbes used it as a metaphor for the all-powerful state. Like I say, monolith. You could describe it as a Leviathan when we talk about global government, global mind control. But I also noted that the Church of Satan, the satanic group, has a special emphasis on Leviathan, and they associate him with the direction west, and they face their altars to the west. And I thought, what does that mean? And so I kind of looked into it, and there's some sort of a association between this particular entity and magic. But anyway, it's a rabbit trail I'm kind of following here. I've been looking closely at the intersection between satanic movements, Hollywood. So in other words, Hollywood and the occult, where these intersect, and then how that merges with science fiction. And so you see this alien demon thing coming up, and I'm like, I think this might be some kind of a deliberate synthesis. Because, we're always talking about the dialectics and how you have aliens on the left, demons to the right. I mean, on the right, they call the same thing demons or aliens, depending what side you're on. And it seems like they might be merging these things. So both sides agree the thing is real. They just disagree on the interpretation. And that's how every one of these dialectics works. So, like, both sides agree that man is screwing up the climate. One side says climate change, the other side says weather modification tech. So they both agree it's happening. They just disagree on the cause. Well, I'm noticing this is the same exact template. The fact that it's aliens or demons and it's split down the middle politically suggests that this is how they're going to get both sides to agree that the thing is real. And I don't believe we've ever seen these things merged this closely. And this pretty much obviously it's like unavoidable now. So much so that Stephen Greer is calling it out. So it looks like another dialectic, which means a synthesis is coming. So this is why I'm suggesting there's likely some kind of plot twist. I mean, look what they did in 2020. They upgraded our collective paradigm, and they introduced a new iteration of sin. One way of looking at what they introduced. The pandemic model reinforces the entire scientific paradigm in a way that it mirrors the traditional religious paradigm, but it's just similar concepts, but dressed up with sci-fi, updated. And so we have had updates. Like I mentioned on the call, the moon landing, it synchronized all mankind into this new paradigm, like this new myth that unified us. And I think that we've been looking at decades of predictive programming for this. So it seems to me that they're going to introduce something but it's not going to be super unifying. There's going to be a division over what we determine it to be. And the latest few movies we've talked about, like I think Third Body Problem, Pluribus, and I think there's even a couple others where the alien presence that arrives doesn't physically show itself, but might manifest as AI. You have Joe Rogan. Again, Joe Rogan tends to be one of the conduits for the agenda of the day. He has been increasingly open to the idea that Jesus is coming back through AI. Now that's ridiculous, and a lot of people have suffered from chat GPT psychosis as a result of believing this stuff. But again, the limiting factor as to what they can introduce onto the world stage is public incredulity. And is there anything the public won't believe at this time? I kind of don't think so. I think you could even look at the whole Epstein thing as opening the Overton window, where one day you're dealing in a sane society, talking about things that are relatively normal, and the next day, hey, all these familiar faces we see on TV are secretly eating children, and they're calling it jerky. Where the president's being accused of these horrible crimes, so it's like they just sort of take this Overton window concept and just break it. They smash it, where the window of discourse, acceptable discourse, has been open so wide anything goes. Like they've opened a portal to some other dimension and just let everything in. It's Pandora's box, pandemonium. Yeah, please give the stream a like or a dislike. It doesn't matter which. Fly White Guy comments, nah. Well, it doesn't matter. Your comment alone is engagement, and that's really all we need here. If we care about the algorithm picking this up, I'm not convinced that it matters 100%. My objective here for bringing people into the think tank is more of a target marketing campaign using AI agents. I don't think randoms are going to click with this as quickly as people who are already looking through the propaganda matrix and seeing it for what it is. All right, let's continue here. Going through my Twitter feed, it's at Real Tim Osman. Like, listen to these quotes. This is from a Joe Rogan show. Pulp Fiction co-creator Roger Avery. These are a few quotes. I think the Luciferians cast a spell on the world. Okay, so now we live in a world that believes in magic. They're manipulating everything. It's an illusion. Reality as we know it is fake. See, to me, this is muddying the water. There's no nuance to say it's fake without qualifying it. Another quote, people are eating babies. Another one, there's a grand design to get us to be desensitized to the idea of demons eating babies. I think there's sacrifices going on every day in Los Angeles. These are just a handful of quotes. And this is on, a top podcast, Joe Rogan. I don't know if he's still bigger than Candace Owens or she's eclipsed him, but they've mainstreamed QAnon stuff. They've mainstreamed the kinds of things that were never taken seriously. David Icke seems to be angry. I mean, I see him on X all the time, and it seems like every other comment, he's like, I've been saying this for 20 years. It's like everything that he was censored and demonized, maligned, and mocked for is now mainstream media, tabloid journalism. Tomino says Project Hail Mary, next big sci-fi in a few weeks. The Martian's author. Oh yeah, okay. Project Hail Mary, and I believe that one has. I want to double check because I watched the trailer. I think it was 4.2 light years. Okay, here we go. Project Hail Mary, and it's by Andy Weir, features a journey to, no, it's 11.9 light years. Another star system. Might have to watch it. This is interesting. Now, in Third Body Problem, the UFOs sent a message through all of our social media, all of our TV screens, and it said, "You are bugs." Okay, we'll see. So another element I'm seeing in this particular one, this Hail Mary, is the sacrificial astronaut. You know, the astronaut doing something to save mankind. There's always this like almost a religious connotation here. Like, obviously, Hail Mary, and Hail Mary, Catholic, but also I think it's a reference to the goddess Isis, goddess of the night sky. I think there's some symbolism in this movie as well, but ultimately it's religious, it's astrotheological, and it's space as a modern iteration of heaven. What was that other movie where, oh, Moonfall, the director of Independence Day, Roland Emmerich's Moonfall. So Moonfall it is revealed that the moon is an arc, that it's not a native object. It moved over here and it has a bunch of stuff inside. So they send this person up there who happens to be 33 to the moon base in order to stop the moon from falling on us or something. I think the moon does fall. If you haven't seen Moonfall, it has a lot of nods to Kubrick, but ultimately it centers around this man who becomes a savior of mankind by sacrificing himself to save the earth from the falling moon. But this astronaut is savior, Armageddon, where you have the astronaut has to blow himself up to destroy the asteroid before it hits the earth. And it's Bruce Willis, Armageddon. So again, Armageddon, religious theme, salvation. And again, it's the astronaut as savior. It's just fascinating how they've consistently presented the astronauts as these, elevated saviors of mankind, self-sacrificing, taking the risks. Thank you very much. Appreciate the channel support, Reality Witness. Lean Dion says, I feel sorry for the normies worldwide. This issue is crazy making indeed. Then add constant reported wars, Epstein, and I talked to them and they think it's the end of the world. Yeah, I think it's a deliberate campaign to overwhelm people. I think it's ultimately about overwhelming people. Look, I used to describe the news cycle as 48 hours of news every 24 hours. So no individual could possibly parse it all, which means they have to just outsource their news aggregation, to outsource their perception of the world to pundits that they trust. And I don't think you need to outsource. You don't need to go through every single news story to figure out what's going on. You can categorically reject claims if they don't meet certain standards. That's why I'm not overwhelmed. And I'm not in the camp of everything's fake, but I know what's fakeable, what's likely fake. We recognize the hallmarks of fakery. It's not difficult. A sudden case of red pilling says the new Spielberg movie Disclosure coming out right before the Trump announcement. Yeah, exactly. You see how these things are correlated. What came first? Was there a sudden spike in interest in aliens because of Spielberg and then the politicians jump on it? Or were they already planning to do their quote disclosure and Hollywood is just lending a hand as usual in the form of predictive programming? I mean, if you look at it, since that trailer came out, we've had many examples of it's essentially gauged public interest in the phenomenon. Yeah, Dan W. Moonfall's end boss was an alien AI thing, and you can see the Saturnian symbolism. It even shows up with this hexagram shape. But it had AI controlling the moon, it had the main character willingly sacrificing himself to save mankind. He happens to be 33 because they love their 33-year-old saviors. Dan says constant psychological warfare was the Iraq war, not as bad at the time, or maybe I didn't listen to the news as much back then. So to deal with the guy on Joe Rogan who said that everything's fake, the way I qualify it is this. The entire news, the establishment news media rests upon an edifice of fakery. So their perspective has the presupposition that all the previous news was real. So they're already bent. They're already non-objective. But even if they're telling the truth, therefore, you can consider them to be somewhat, lying. But most of the reportage is real. Like they're telling you about the weather. They're reporting on local news, crime, traffic. That's real, obviously. So we can't say everything's fake. But the fake events, the staged historic events that will forever remain in our history books, those events are actually in the minority. However, they take up the spotlight, they take up all the air, and every other outlet bounces off of it as though it's real. All the op-eds, all the opinions, all the celebrities react to it. So the fake permeates the entire system. So you don't need everything to be fake. Another way to describe it is media is a liar and a very good liar. Good liars do not lie with every breath. Like you can't say everything's fake. Like if a liar lies with every breath, nobody would trust them. So a good liar lies strategically to those who already trust them. So the media has our trust. They lie strategically and they win every time. They don't really overplay their hand. Their psyops are actually very minimalistic. And the real thing is about the response anyway. They provoke the responses and then it just self-perpetuates. We got, one squib on September 10th has been the starting point for how many different variations of conspiracy theories. The focus, of this entire media ecosystem, mainstream and alternative, had been pretty much hijacked by this scenario and its fallout ever since. But as far as, was it always this bad? I think it always has been. But the difference is media is now pervasive now. It's inescapable now. But it was also more centralized. There were fewer outlets, so control was still tight. So now we have this illusion that there's a diversity of opinion, diversity of thought, and everybody's a journalist, everybody can chime in. True. But there's no diversity when it comes to point of view. Your point of view is either mainstream or alternative. There isn't really a gray area. And both of these perspectives, no matter how far down the rabbit hole you go, both of these perspectives rest upon the presumption that the previous 50, 60 years of fake events are essentially true. So if you don't eradicate that as a basis for your present worldview, your perspective nullifies any attempt at objectivity. You're in a fictional universe. Lean Dion says strict hate speech laws, of course, ready to go and implemented after the Bondi op. Yeah, and so that one had a number of hoax indicators. You got the cheesecloth guy with the theatrical blood on his head making TikTok videos. It's like, look at me, I got shot in the head. And he was the one who was also at 10-7. So he's at these two different events. And before Bondi, 2 weeks before, he was talking about how the anti-Semites are about to attack. And then he's at this, what is it, a Hanukkah related event or something, he gets shot. Then, of course, you have the hero story. I think the hero in that story made more than $2 million on his GoFundMe. Like, if I ever get into crisis acting, I'm getting a GoFundMe. Do they have to share? Like, let's say you're a crisis actor and your role, for some reason, really captures the minds and the hearts of the public, and you raise millions in GoFundMe payments. Do you have to share with the other actors? Yeah, but you're right about that. The new hate speech laws ready to be implemented kind of tells you that that was the agenda. So, in other words, one of the hoax indicators is if there's a ready to go political agenda following an event, the event is probably a PR stunt to sell the agenda. All right, let me see here. Going through my Twitter feed. Emma says, who else feels the entire world is under a spell and only a few awakened souls can see through it? See, the irony of saying something like that is that Emma is, and this is on Twitter, is insinuating that she sees through it. But I followed her account and she pushes satanic panic, MK Ultra, and all the usual, Epstein and other truther claptrap. So that's one of the illusions they sell you, is that if you become a truther, you're awake. You're not asleep anymore. You're awake. I'm like, they're not awake. They're not awake if they're still passive recipients of propaganda, if they haven't adopted the critical posture. So they're not really awake. They're actually having a nightmare. Lean Dion says they found the perp's driver's license on the ground conveniently too, like a passport, immediate arrest. Yeah, if I had written the Charlie Kirk psyop, I would have had Tyler Robinson drop his passport. Signature move. I mean, that's classic psyop entertainment complex. And like, okay, you just had that shooting in Austin where the guy comes out with the shirt that says property of Allah. It may as well have said, I'm the bad guy in this story, or I'm a terrorist. It's just like property of Allah. And they said, oh, and they found a Quran in his car. It's like, how do we even know where his car is? How did they find it so fast? The guy's been dead for just like 5 minutes and they already have the whole story. So the same thing with manifestos. The shooting happens like, oh, we just read the manifesto. This is why they did it. Scooby-Doo justice is what we used to call it, where the media serves as the judge, jury, executioner, and they solve the entire crime in one episode, unmask the bad guy. And it's because they have to compete in the attention economy. They can't drag these stories out like a crime drama. It's got to be like TikTok ready. Like, we haven't had a good serial killer drama grip the nation or the world anywhere in how long? When was the last time we had a serial killer scare? No, it's always about the mass shooter. And I think that just reflects, it doesn't mean that we've lost our attention span. It just means that there's more competition for our attention. There's no spare seconds. When do people actually put their Black Mirror down? Lean Dion says, like these emails, they say their full name and detail heinous crimes on Gmail. Yeah, what's with that? You're on Gmail, your name, your email address, it's searchable. And you're like, let me get some more of that beef jerky and pizza. And the other one's like, yeah, let's make sure that they're really young. Like, okay, this sounds phony and fake. Like, I haven't seen the email exchanges of real human traffickers, but I don't think that's how they communicate. It's almost like a parody or a psyop script. Like, this is how the bad guys talk. They use code words. And I think that the way that particular psyop worked is it's mostly on the premise that the truthers will believe anything that's leaked, nothing that's official. So if they're told by the authorities, hey, this is the case, it's a lie. But if it's a leaked document, they believe it. It's like reverse psychology. And these millions of files could just be fabrications, specifically just like fiction. They live in a, it's like fan fiction or fictive level one from Black Mirror, where all this fan fiction is being planted so they can dig it up and say, look what I found, look what I found. And you're incentivized to do it. You create a video, look at this latest thing. This is what he was doing. Get tons of hits. Nobody does anything. And the reason why no one does anything is that's the whole purpose of social media and alternate reality games that are being played right now utilize this, where it's all about your attention, getting you to take what you feel like is meaningful action, which is content creation, commenting, retweeting. And that is a catharsis. That's all you need. So you get the outrage, you get the anger, you retweet it, you did your part. You can sleep at night. No need to go march. And this shows you how, okay, I talk about like the mainstream mediation, the MSM, is the big tent. And then the truthers are in a subset. So it's a circle in the circle, which means deeper mind control, MSM plus. And one example of that is you have a mainstream story of an ICE agent killing an activist. And this creates walkouts across the country, protests across the country. And there's a lot of noise ginned up as a result. Well, now you have this 6 million document leak about how all the bad guys have exposed themselves and this is how they do it. They're all sick, psychopathic, satanic cannibals. And do you see any conspiracy theorists marching, walking out of schools, demanding accountability? Like, no. So why is it that the political left, the mainstream news consumers, are hitting the streets over one death, and the entire truther conspiracy subculture is given all the evidence they need to expose this massive conspiracy, and they don't get outraged enough to even just make one day of protests? It's because they've been nullified. For them, retweeting is everything they need to do to feel like they've done something. Truthertainment. There's that book by Neil Postman. It's a collection of essays called Amusing Ourselves to Death. And he really makes a strong point about how this constant flood of information has made it difficult to make one thing a higher priority or more important than anything else. It's had this like flattening effect where nothing is worth getting up and fighting over. I guess you could say we've been demoralized. I say nullified, but demoralized. Yuri Bezmenov wrote about this, where there's no more desire or actually will to do anything. Dan W says crisis actors playing ICE agents. I think that the thing that we saw in Minneapolis was essentially a drill. And I think that the one with the other guy, Alex Preddy, obviously the guy was an agitator. He was a role player. I think these things are essentially drills or these mass casualty drills that we always talk about are not hard to do. Easy to perform, easy to fake casualties, easy, you got blanks, special effects, and that's all it takes to get the public engaged. So I've been looking at this William Lipman's work, and he's the author that preceded Edward Bernays, I think. Edward Bernays may have lifted a lot of this guy's ideas, but one of the things he said is that, and this goes right along with Michael Aquinas and Mind War, is that these manufactured crises are used to determine what the majority wants, and then they give the majority what they want. So it's still majority rules in a sense. They're still pandering to the mob, but they're just preventing the mob from actually doing any real damage. They're channeling the outrage in a productive way. That's why I kind of default to the idea that we're living in some kind of soft totalitarianism. Like that, this is 1984. Is it dystopian or is it just efficient? And I'm not siding with the programmers, but as an alien anthropologist, I have to wonder, is this a necessary situation? Like, is this how things have to be to prevent 8 billion people from wrecking the place? I guess I don't have a lot of faith in humanity at large. And I'm not even misanthropic. Like, I don't even believe in climate change. And I do think this universe is, like I said, human centric, which again, I understand that goes against the scientific consensus because we're not supposed to be the center of it all. So I'm a little anthropocentric. I'm sort of in that sense, but not in like a religious way. Like, God made this for us. Like in that sense, like most religions will say that, and they'll say that's a religious belief that we're the center of the thing. But I think that might actually be the right conclusion here. Is that speciesist? Is that wrong of me to think that human beings are special? And there are people who will say, yeah, that we are of secondary importance to trees, to animals, to whales. Is anybody here looking forward to lockdowns for fallout? If we have that, because Iran's threatening to nuke Tel Aviv, if they do a nuke, if they do EMPs, and we do get fallout lockdowns, I'm going to catch up on a lot of Netflix. I'm not exactly opposed to it. I think 2020 was such a big revelation. It shows where everybody is. It's a litmus test. And every litmus test that we experience collectively really just, it shows me how incontestable this system is, but it also solidifies my own position in it. Like I'm really not bothered. I'm detached. I'm on the world stage. I'm not of it. I think we are in many ways media gnostics. And I think this is the place to be. You don't need the additional stress of being reactive, triggerable, and programmed. Dan W says, will we need masks for fallout lockdowns? I think so. I think they'll have it'll be the same thing, but instead of the virus, it'll be a different explanation. I don't know if there'll be the same resistance, if there'll be lockdown resistance. If you haven't seen the movie Humanity Bureau with Nicolas Cage, it's a 2017 film. And what they do is they have people locked down because they think there's radiation and they can't leave. And they're not allowed to have Geiger counters. It's like contraband. So it says during their flight, Cross trades his bureau. Cross is Nicolas Cage. So anyway, they learned that way north to Canada is a no man's land, radiation. So they give Cross a Geiger counter to measure the radiation, and they give him iodine tablets to protect against radiation absorption. And by the way, you know who's selling iodine tablets for radiation? Laura Loomer, who has a desk at the Pentagon. So I think that's an indicator if you have these grifters who are in on the psyops already investing in iodine tablets to sell to their subscribers, well, why do you think they're doing that? Because they know something. But anyway, he makes it north and he finds out that there is no reason to actually keep everybody locked down. It was a ruse. A ruse to keep people locked down, to keep them thinking that they can't leave and they don't have the devices to test for themselves. So imagine that. Imagine being locked down under false pretenses. Auto Hoaxer GTFO says the recent New York City serial killer story never caught a buzz. It came and went. Is that the guy who left the skull on 33rd Street? Did they ever get a name? A human skull, Coney Island Boardwalk, West 33rd Street, December 9th. Yeah, so it's Coney Island. A skull reportedly found on West 33rd Street and Surf Avenue in the scrub at the base of the boardwalk. And then we had that story about the guy that was digging up cemeteries. At the same time, the new 28 Days Later, the Bone Throne came out. Lean Dion says, remember a while ago that PSA in New York, what to do with the new kids? Yeah, I saw that. It's like, get in your house, get in your car. I'm like, what about the homeless people? What are they going to do? But the PSA is like, when the nuke hits, you need to go inside and gather around your TV and wait for the media to instruct you on what to do next. I'm going to just go into my home and watch Friends, season 1 through 17. Does everybody know how to duck and cover? See, my theory on this is that the duck and cover drill is terrorism. It's to instill the fear of God into the students at a very young age, but it's a God construct. So the nuke represents like a war god. It's a God construct in that sense. And when you're kneeling under your desk, essentially what you're doing is you're genuflecting, you're praying to the God of the state, like state power, essentially. And I think the duck and cover drills for mass shooters is the same thing. It's all about this idea that you should be scared on your hands and knees until the authority figure comes in. It's like dog training for humans. It's submission. Now the desk, the almighty desk. The desk will protect you, or could protect you, if they make it out of the same stuff they make passports out of. Whatever Trump's ear is made out of survived in AR-15. The same stuff that's in Charlie Kirk's neck. You remember that story? Oh, he had the Man of Steel's neck. His neck stopped the bullet. He saved lives. So we can take comfort in the fact that Charlie Kirk saved lives. Right, because he stopped the bullet with his neck. Because if he didn't do that, the bullet would have kept going. It had no intention of stopping. It would have taken everybody out. So Charlie Kirk's a hero. And then the shooter goes to a Wendy's and he poses next to a Superman poster, which is kind of weird. There are still people who think that Trump got shot in the ear. But look, we're going to set the record straight. My next project is this Charlie Kirk is Alive. It's an ebook and video, and I'm going to find a local squib tech to demonstrate it. This is an ongoing project along with the systematizing of predictive and concurrent programming correlated with PSYOPs over the last 63 years. So we have a lot of projects that are in the works. And I have to say thanks to everyone for being a part of the think tank, the research, the comments, and all the support, because it is going into laying the intellectual foundation for the establishment of a third branch of media. And that is what this is. We are the core of that. That's why I'm not a control freak. I don't care what people think. I don't mean to be hypercritical, but I am adhering to standards that I cannot waver from, because purity at this early stage is of the utmost importance. Because if we scale up and we're 90% pure, that 10% is going to be bigger and more problematic. So we're better off purging now, getting rid of any bad habits of thought, any mind aids patients. If you're a MAIDS patient, you're going to be kicked off the raft. And really, it's not that we want to be super exclusive, but we just can't let any flaws in our arguments metastasize. We just need to nip it in the bud now, and it's working. All right, thanks everyone. We'll be back tomorrow. I want to say thanks to the caller for letting me test out this phone system. I think it's going to work. So I'm going to get the premium version this weekend, and I'm going to choose a vanity number that's easy to memorize. So we will have a 1-800 number, and then in a few days I'll have my mobile studio set up where I will be able to take phone calls wherever we are. And I'll just tweak with the sound a little bit, but we're just about there. We're also live on Kick. So we're on Kick, X, and YouTube, and we will be expanding beyond that. So our numbers right now don't reflect the interest in this, don't even reflect the number of people who are deprogrammed. Like, this is just a small sample. And in my opinion, there's easily 10 to 15,000 recruitables right now. Just needs one good set of videos to go viral in this area, and we'll start to aggregate many of those who have seen through and recognize the need to orient ourselves in a different place, so we have a different perspective. There's no need to try to talk sense in their conspiratainment world, in their infotainment world. They're not interested. They're not interested in truth. They're interested in clickbait, engagement, entertainment, and all sorts of superstitions and unseriousness. All right, we'll see you tomorrow for Infinite Plane. Saturday, we'll start earlier in the afternoon, and hopefully we'll have a new number by then. Otherwise, I'll see you in Discord.